Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Chartreuse Leprechaun. My name is Mark, your host, and it's time for that monthly-ish update video. Now, this month has been quiet. Well, actually, it's been 2 months since we skipped the personal video in May. I mean, between the thumb surgery, my dad's funeral, the disability hearing, it just kind of made sense to skip it and do the one for this month a little early. Now, that said, we are looking at a pretty busy June, July, and maybe August. So we have studio news, tech news, programming stuff, including some changes. And, well, we'll see what else we can get into. And there's going to be lots of things we would like your input on. So be sure to sound off in the comments, please, and thank you. Okay, so the big news. One of our children moved into their own place. And by the way, all 4 of our children are adults, and they still live here because in the current U.S. housing market, it's really hard to find affordable housing. Letting them stay here just made the best financial sense, and it was the loving thing to do. You know, instead of just throwing them out because they're old enough. So anyway, super kudos to my daughter. She is so excited, and it's great seeing her so excited. I'm really excited for her too. Sure, it's sad to see her move out, but it is super exciting to see your children grow like this. Now, I hear you talking out there. That's all fine and wonderful, you say, but what does that mean for the Chartreuse Leprechaun channel? Great question. I'm glad you asked. We are going to experience what I'm calling the Great Switcheroo. And that means we get to move from this semi-disaster area all the way around the corner, down the hallway, around this corner, which should be fun getting my desk through, into this wonderful space that we have all kinds of room to play with, and a closet for storage. That's right, we're moving. And moving means several cool things for us and for you too. As you know, the existing room is multi-use and multi-person space. It's also way oversized and horribly shaped for what we do. And because it's multi-use and multi-person, we're always having to work around other people wanting to use the room. I have to schedule my production time around other people doing things. I put the cameras and lights up, usually in some awkward positions, and take them down every time I use them. And they're rarely in the same place twice, which means presets and placements don't exist. And then there's the sound issues. Because of the entryway and the window, we can't sound isolate or sound insulate. And this staircase is a giant funnel for noise from downstairs. So, any noises, barking dogs, people talking, my wife doing cake stuff, the TV, all of it gets amplified by the staircase and funneled right up here into our studio space. Well, those all go away, or mostly go away after we move, so that's good news for you. Well, and for us, of course. And that also applies to noises in the current studio area, like snoring dogs, and we get away from all this clutter, too. Now, those are the upsides, and let's be honest, those are some really good upsides. On the downside, there's always a downside, right? The AC in the new room is not quite what it is in here, so I don't know what that'll mean for computer cooling. Lighting will be a new challenge, too. The adjustable ceiling light that we've been relying on and the fan in here, yeah, don't have that. And the room is on the front of the house, so street noise, front door noise, all that wonderful stuff. Oh, but wait, there's more! Good stuff, that is. We get to paint. So share your thoughts on colors for the new room. Oh, and we get to decorate the whole room the way we want it. Great news for us, and hopefully for you too. And as an added bonus, we get to move all our stuff. The desk, and of course the gear, the chairs, bookcase, the gumball machines and decorations, the storage carts and lights, other peripherals, all our boxes, partially pictured here, and all the stuff I don't realize needs to move or get done that I will remember as soon as I see it. Needless to say, there will be lots of experimentation with light and sound for the next couple of months at least. so you can expect those as our future tech education segments. Speaking of tech education, so far, there hasn't been much going on, and I'm whispering because I don't want the Chartreuse Leprechaun to figure that out, which is making the very dangerous assumption he hasn't figured it out already. Now, we did have some tech moments this month, though. We were finally able to budget in enough money to get a working Windows key and get rid of that annoying watermark. Thank you for tolerating that, by the way. All we did was change the motherboard, and Microsoft decided our Windows version was no longer valid. It's been fine for over 2 years, and their customer service wouldn't do a thing about it. But other than that little hiccup, everything's going nicely. Temps are actually about 2C higher than they were, but we still aren't getting out of the 60C range while rendering, so no complaints. The only other thing that's happened is we added a third monitor. Why? I was bored and curious, and that's a dangerous combination. Like having the Leprechaun hanging around kind of dangerous. Anyway, I pulled the trigger and reconnected this 24-inch thing. You know, the old monitor that has a DVI plug that's adapting to HDMI cord that's adapted to a display port. Yeah, that one. You remember that one, right? It's the one we replaced with that 32-inch 4K 60 hertz monitor. Yeah, that one. Now, to be honest, I can't say I'm getting full use out of it. I just use it to monitor temps and show all my episode notes, but it's fun having it around, and it feels kind of cool having 3 monitors, and fortunately our GPU is holding up nicely. I really wish I could upgrade that, and we will, eventually, when we win the lottery, which we don't play. Which leads us to some programming notes. Much to my surprise, making those Leprechaun story collections wasn't the fun trip down memory lane that I expected. I had forgotten how bad some of those videos really were. On the bright side, it's great to realize how much better our recordings have become thanks to better editing software, better gear, and of course, learning more about what the heck I'm doing. But those old recordings were so bad. I had to re-record some of the Leprechaun stories from the Subnautica collections. Probably should have done that for some of the other series too. Now, I did use the same scripts and pictures to do it, so give me your guesses as to which ones got remastered, and I'll let you know if you got it right. Also, I mentioned back in May, we might be going through June, possibly into July with those Leprechaun story collection videos on Sundays. Well, we won't. I expected more Subnautica collections, and I also expected more Dismantle stories, but between the thumb surgery and my dad's funeral, those were eliminated. So the last story collection was published Memorial Day weekend. And now that means Leprechaun stories return next week, since my hand seems to be well enough to handle more stuff. Hopefully. Which brings me to a programming change. Now, Wednesdays have been Leprechaun stories since we started the channel, but those short videos are tanking my stats, so I'm going to try and experiment for the next month or so. And that means I'm going to turn Leprechaun stories into YouTube Shorts. I'm also going to try and do a couple of those videos per week. For purposes of our experiment, those will be Dismantle and Planet Crafter. I figure a month is long enough to see how my brain does with the added stress and activity. It may take longer to reach a decision. We'll just have to see how that goes for us. Which is a great segue into health updates. So, for starters, let's talk about a dental issue. I had a tooth break, and it got seriously infected. Apparently it was broken and getting infected long before that piece of tooth came off. The only course of action we had was to take the tooth out. My wife now says I look like a hockey player, and I'm so proud and happy about that. So why am I telling you all this? Well, because there will be some added pronunciation and speech sounds going forward, so my apologies for the oddities, but sadly there's not anything we can do to change that. Now, I mentioned earlier about the thumb surgery. It actually went really well, and I was able to start using it the next day. Doctor said I could, and wow, I really did have full use. Really slow, careful use, but full use. And PT started the day after surgery too. That wasn't fun. And still isn't. Neither is the rehab at home. That tendon really hurts to use because, it's still swollen. You can see it. but it is slowly getting better. Unfortunately, the dystonia that had died down slightly after the injury is back, and I can only assume that low use, the issues got masked. Now, the disability hearing that was scheduled for last week, as you all know, I've been waiting a long time for that, and it was scheduled for June 2, except it didn't happen. Due to issues at the court, no fault of mine, it had to be postponed. Now, they have promised to let me know when they can fit it in, and I'm being told they're working to fit it in, and not just put it back into the normal scheduling process, which would be, it's months from now. So we'll see how that works out. And I'm still in the dark in terms of what that means for doctors. I'm still looking for a doctor to treat the dystonia. And while I'm still seeing my highly rated neurologist, I'm also trying to find someone in my insurance network so I can cut down on costs. I was really hoping for a favorable disability ruling since that would change my available doctor network, but that's on hold. So, still lots of unanswered questions, and we'll just have to wait and see. Now, for the final note on health news, I want to say a word about my dad. As many of you know, my father passed away in April after a long battle with cancer at the age of 84. And he led a really full life. 3 children, 9 grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren, a wife of over 60 years who loved him and he loved deeply. He had lots of friends everywhere, impacted lives all over the world. Quite an amazing man. We just had a memorial service in May, and it was wonderful, and there will be another one for a lot of family reasons, dates still to be determined, but that will probably be in July for family reasons, so we may have another break in things on the channel. We'll see. Needless to say, we're still processing through all this, and probably will be for a while, but on the bright side, he can finally rest without suffering. And all that brings me to something important. Between health struggles, my dad passing, and all the rest, I've been thinking on the subject of good days versus bad days. Now, in our day and age, we have a very wrong perspective on good and bad days, and the problem is our perspective is based on our comfort levels. Basically, we decide whether it's a good day or a bad day based on whether we feel comfortable or not, whether we like it or not. And the truth is, being a good day doesn't mean it's easy. Being a hard day doesn't mean it's bad. Ask any athlete, and they will tell you that hard work is what makes you stronger and more prepared for hard competitions. In the Bible, the book of James tells us to be thankful and find joy in hard things because ultimately it matures us. Sometimes it's hard to find joy, but it's always possible to find God. Speaking of sound interruptions, where was I? Oh yeah, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I don't always find God with a big smile on my face saying, "Wow, this beating I'm taking is awesome. Thank you for the chance to endure this." Most of the time, I find God and I'm loaded with "what in the world" type of questions. And sometimes he answers and sometimes he doesn't. But he's always there. And he's always ready to hold me, speak tenderly to me, encourage me, and love me. God's love never fails. Even when my physical, emotional, mental, and sometimes spiritual strength fails, his love never fails, and it's always there to be found. The Bible is very clear on that point. We are to be conformed to the image of Christ, and if we submit to that process, it can get ugly from an earthly perspective. How ugly, you ask? Great question. I'm glad you asked. The books of Matthew, Mark, and Luke tell us that in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus pleaded with God to avoid the cross. The book of Luke adds that he sweated blood because he was so stressed out, and that led to the cross. No matter what form you think the cross actually was, it is still considered one of the most excruciating ways to die ever invented by man. So let's see. He didn't get what he wanted. He was beaten horribly. He was abandoned by his friends. Excruciating death. Let's face it, from our earthly perspective, that qualifies as a really bad day. But look what came out of it. Because he submitted to that, Jesus was raised from the dead holding the keys or the power of death and hell. And submitted to him, you no longer have to fear death and hell. It doesn't mean you won't experience problems. In fact, you're promised them if you're truly submitted to Christ. God brought redemption from the power of sin to all who come to him through the cross. God brought healing, spirit, soul, and body for all who come to him through the cross. Through the cross and the resurrection of Jesus from the dead, God gives us a life we cannot imagine, and he gives it to all who will come to him. Now, that life won't always look wonderful and awesome, so I won't promise you a life of riches and rainbows. I will promise you a life of hope, regardless of your circumstances, but you only get it by going to Him and surrendering to His authority. You only get it by being born again by faith through the shed blood of Jesus and the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. So, I'm praying for you. I'm praying you find Him in your, insert your adjective of choice type of day that you're experiencing. And I think that's enough for now. Leave us any suggestions you have that may help us get better. And also hit that like button, subscribe, set yourself up for notifications, all those wonderful things so you don't miss anything around here. And if you'd like to support us here at the Chartreuse Leprechaun, check out our merch and Patreon pages linked in the description below. They are, by the way, both a work in progress, just like Twitter and Facebook. Hopefully we're gaining on all that, though. And remember, always, always, always remember, if you see it, and you can't quite explain it, you can be sure the leprechaun did it. Now you have yourselves a great day, a great week, and we will see you here next time on the Chartreuse Leprechaun. Bye-bye.